was listening to it
Love that.
last night.
Hmm.
Will Guidara, and
Hmm.
he said in his book, and I don't think it's his line, but he said, leaders create leaders,
Hmm.
right? And if you're doing your job well as a leader, then you're really up leveling your staff to become the best version of themselves, which for some people, leadership is that destination. And if you've done a good job with that, then you're handing over a team that should not want to replace because they are good at what they do. Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and our guest today is Pam Meissner. Pam is a seasoned financial and operational leader who has served as CFO, COO, and CEO across multiple industries, guiding companies to billion-dollar valuations by turning complex financials into clear, actionable strategies. She now works closely with law firm owners to boost profitability, improve cash flow, and build firms that are not only successful, but truly sellable, using Cathcap's exit planning framework and insight from her book, Panic to Profit: How Six Key Numbers Can Make a Six-Figure Difference. Just a little typo there on my bio. It's not her book, but it's Brooke Lively's book.
Yeah.
But check it out on Amazon. If you don't have it, that needs to be added to your library. Known for blending strategic insight with grounded execution, she helps firms become financially sound, operationally scalable, and exit ready, while also balancing life as a proud mom, award-winning baker, and lifelong learner who brings passion, precision, and problem solving to everything she does. So, Pam, welcome to the Profit with Law podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So little factoid that I don't think I've shared here on the podcast before. We're 500 episodes in. Everybody should know everything about me at this point, but you're a baker. I got in the kitchen probably at 5 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I loved baking growing up. And anytime my mother was baking, I was right there beside her. But I had an ulterior motive because I was all about licking the bottom of the bowl and eating some of the dough. And that was what drew me to it. But then I truly love baking, and even now, I when I have the time, I might be known to make a good chocolate cake, apple pie, stuff like that. But um, definitely wouldn't put it in a bio. It's not nearly at that level. But I do love just taking that time and spending some time in the kitchen and making something delicious. So love that about you, and of course a parent, and you did all those amazing things while being a parent, which is an amazing feat. People don't know who you are, so I like to start the first question just to easy tee up. Just I read your bio, but give us a little bit of the backstory. How in the world did you end up in this line of work? What makes you passionate about it? And then we'll jump into a conversation that's really, going to be really helpful for our listeners.
Sure. I think you can summarize my journey as the road less traveled. I started off very typical. I went to university, got my CPA, went to work for one of the big law or big CPA firms, and then I got bored. And so I was the first one in 100 years of my family to go back to the homeland. It was 100 years lapse. And so I went back just after the wall came down. So that was adventurous. And then picked up my husband, whose fourth language was English. And we moved to Russia. And there I was with Nestle, and that's where we built the market up. We were late to the market, deep pockets, but we built it up to $1 billion in sales in 3 years as a team. And then I retired, came out of retirement a decade later. During retirement, our youngest wasn't meeting developmental milestones, and so I had to reshore the family from Japan to Indiana, where my family was. Fast forward, he's graduated from college now. He was diagnosed with autism. He still lives with us, but so much joy there. And I came out of retirement and started working for an entrepreneur, and we had a formula for acquisitions, and everything was fine until it wasn't. We had a liquidity event, and boy, is that a life lesson on that journey. And so I told him, I'll figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Didn't want to be a burden to the firm. And so I found Brooke and I started working at Cathcap, and we've built this up. And now it's like I've been working in law for my whole career.
It's interesting because I never stepped foot in the state of Indiana, but my CPA license is from the state of Indiana. So, um,
Go
we have
Hoosiers. I'm just
we
saying this has been a long time since we can be proud of being number one team in America.
so we have a lot in common that we didn't even know about, which is really cool. In the Jewish community, we call that Jewish geography. Anytime two Jews get together to try to figure out who's related to who. Um,
Yes, there's that famous holiday song. Uh,
yep, yep.
yeah.
Adam Sandler's song. So,
Yes. Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, it really happens in real life, and it's we almost always find a connection somewhere. So, love that we found a way to be connected here. All right, so you're the Exit Pro, and I want to just kind of like tee this up. So a lot of our listeners might be in the earlier part of their journey, or they're the middle part of their journey. They're not thinking about exiting. Somebody might be listening and be like, "Wow, this is so timely because I'm so done with my firm and ready to hang it up." Right? So we've got the whole spectrum, but
Mhm.
I think and there's a logical side to this that I think people can understand is if you understand what makes a firm valuable, when somebody is buying a firm, what are they actually buying,
Mhm.
right? If you have one-time clients, then your client list is worthless, right? Like, yeah, maybe there'll be some referrals that come in from it, but it's not repeat business. So you don't have value there. If you don't have a marketing system that is predictable, you don't have value there. If you don't have people that are executing in a system and able to execute without you present, you don't have
Mhm.
value there. So when we look at a business and we say, if you operate this business as if you're getting ready to exit, that will force you to operate in a way that is probably really, really good for you as a business owner because you get to extract yourself from the day to day in the business. It doesn't rely on you anymore. You want to make it highly profitable so it's really valuable, which forces you to make decisions that you might not be making today. So I think what would be really valuable for our listeners is if we kind of dive into how does somebody prepare for exit? What are the things they need to look at, and how do they tackle those things, so that even the people who are not looking to exit can understand that if I focus on some of these things, I'll probably improve my business and my life.
Absolutely. And I think you've nailed it in the intro that the less critical you are to the firm, the more valuable the firm is. I think getting in touch with what your firm is worth today and identifying the issues and having some kind of an operating system or support to address those issues is critical. I think it's also delightful to know that you can actually sell your law firm. That's something that's relatively new, um, because so often attorneys just kind of die at their desk, right? Or their firm just goes away, or they refer all their business and close up shop. And that doesn't have to happen. And there's several ways that they have an opportunity to exit. They can do the traditional thing and transition it through a path to partnership. They can sell it to a larger or adjacent firm. And now we're beginning to see big money, PE money, come in and try to do roll ups. All of those create opportunities. I think once you understand what the value of your business is now, you can then take action. And it doesn't always have to be about increasing the value of your law firm, although typically it is. I think a lot of it has to do with start with the end in mind. What does retirement look like to you? We have a product that we evaluate. Are you exit ready? There's a quote in Brooks' book, Exit on Top, sell your law firm at the right time for the right price to the right people, that says 80% of people regret selling their business in the first year. And I think that's because they're not ready. But once you get in touch with what is your firm worth today and what it is the potential value you could build up to it as you take yourself, extract yourself from the day to day and build those systems that you discuss, you might not see the ROI in doing that. You might choose, and I've seen this with many other attorneys that have that entrepreneurial spirit, they take a different strategy and they say, I want to extract the funds from my firm and grow it to a certain point, but then I want to reinvest those in areas where they have competency and capability and time capacity to do that because the the multiples, the way you value a law firm is you take the owner discretionary income and you multiply it times a number. And the multiples in law firms tend to be on the lower side when you consider all of the investment opportunities out there. So start with the end in mind and then work backwards to where you are today and then create that roadmap. And that's what we do. We create roadmaps to get you from where you're at to where you want to be. So I think it's one understanding, what your firm is worth, what kind of an exit that makes you sleep well at night, what are the issues to extract you from the business, and if you're not doing, you know, the legal work or working in your firm, what are you going to do? Retirement looks and feels different for everybody. And
Yeah,
so,
I think that if we start with what does retirement look like, we won't ever get people to do the rest of this conversation because so many people just don't know the answer to that question. And no matter how much they think about it, they just can't imagine it. I recently sat with one of my clients and together with his financial planner, and, we had lunch together with his wife, and the the conversation started with, okay, what do you want? What does retirement look like for you? Because we need to kind of figure out what kind of financials you need to live that retirement, right?
yes,
Um, and we didn't get an answer. We left that meeting without an answer because they didn't know.
I
And that's what I think is really common in real life is that, people are just unsure of what that looks like. What's interesting is that and I know you want to share something. I'm gonna let you talk in a second. But what's interesting is I recently read or listened on Audible to the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins.
yes, yes, it's a
And
great book, right?
I love the book, but when I started the book, I was like, wow, this goes in an absolute contrast to my
Uh-huh,
message, right? To
uh-huh,
everything that I'm about building generational wealth, and
mhm,
he's about dying with zero. That seems like polar opposites. But when you get into the book, the real
mhm.
concept that he wants to share is that we spend our whole life preparing to have money for when we don't need it anymore.
Right.
And it goes for your own use of the money and it goes for, distributing it to family, right? Like, why would you wait until you're dead to give money to your kids when you died at 85, so your kids are 65 and 60, they're already at the tail end of their careers. They don't need your money at that point when they probably needed your money 30 years prior when they were buying a house, when they were trying to take a vacation that they couldn't take because they were just scraping it by because they're putting the kids through all the different after school programs and sports things, right? So it takes looking at the picture differently, and it's not just what do I want in retirement, it's what do I want my legacy to look like, and when do I want that to start, right?
Mhm,
When does the amassing of wealth end and the distribution of wealth begin?
mhm.
And most people probably think like, oh, I'm not going to retire, right? Like we feel invincible in our 40s or 50s or even our 60s, right? I don't know, I'm not in my 60s yet, but the the when you get to that age, yeah, things start to slow down in your body, but you're like, I'm not going to stop working. At some point, you may want to, but I also know people like, first of all, I know of somebody, right? But like, look at Warren Buffett, right? What is he, 96, 97? He's
Yeah.
finally retiring, right?
Yes.
Um, but I know. firsthand of people in their 90s who were going to Manhattan from where I live, which is it's an hour ride on the bus. It's a 30-minute drive with no traffic, but it's an hour ride on the bus and commuting to Manhattan every day and continuing to go to work. And you look at somebody and he's doing it or she's doing it because they want to, not because they have to. So you might be looking at retirement saying, I don't really need all that much because I plan on working through it. But it's also about preparing for the what ifs, right? Like what are the possibilities of maybe you can't have that choice. Maybe you don't get to make that choice, and things like that. So I do think that there's so much to tackle there, and we could, but I don't want to spend the rest of this podcast episode talking about thinking about retirement and all the different options that you have. What I will do is I will have those conversations with some financial planners who I know that we have some coming up and and that we're going to be interviewing. So we'll dive more into that so that people can get a better picture. What I'd like to know from you is going back to the basics. You already threw out like, hey, there's three different ways that you can exit from your firm. That doesn't require you to shut it down, right? And so let's step through those because you kind of threw them out there, but I really wanted people to understand what they are.
Yeah, so the traditional one, which is you transition it to the next generation of lawyers that could be your children that you've supported through law school, or it could be valued employees. What I am seeing is, and I think this has been true for many, many years, is, the old adage of congratulations, you're a partner. Now let's go downstairs to the bank and get you a loan so you can buy in. They don't have the money. I'm seeing firms tackle that with SBA loans and creativity there with owner financing. But before you can get to that point, you have to explain what the path to partnership is. And I find out more often than not that they're like, head down, pencil up, build business, just these very vague things. And so we have a process where we extract from them what are the attributes of a partner because it's not just technical expertise. I mean, you can ask any owner of a business, you mentioned it. Do you have a marketing system? Well, did you go to law school to learn how to market? Probably not. I listen to lots, you do as well, I'm sure, listen to lots of attorneys who lose sleep at night over money. Um, you know, it's it takes many different factors to make a partner. People talk about, like in a litigation firm, being able to be first chair, you know, being able to make it rain, having some core competency to run the business. And I like how you talk about law firms as a business because I think a business that is a law firm is very different from a law firm that's just a law firm. Um, and then there's that it factor. Some people say it's core value alignment, um, but that they have that presence. And I think it's important to talk to people because about what they want, because not everybody wants that path to partnership. I'm working with a firm in Texas right now, and we have two or three people that say, if you expect me to go out and get new business, I'm not your gal. And it's like, thank you for sharing that with us because you're on a different track. Back in the day, they had the minders, grinders, and finders. I think in entrepreneurial firms, you have to have a little bit of each to be successful. And so figuring out where those gaps are and speaking into them, both, telling the firm this is what the path to partnership is and having people self-select out or step up to the plate. And then figuring out where those deficits are and getting the support that's needed to fill those gaps so they're ready when you're ready. It's not, just I talk to 5 to 10 attorneys a week that have gotten to the place and they're like, I don't have any options. So you need to start creating your options. So, the path there is creating clarity about what the journey is and what it's not. Because all too often, people get to that stage in their career and they think only about the upside of partnership, and there's a downside, right? You have the personal guarantees on the line of credit. You have the pleasure of paying taxes on everything that the firm does. You have all the HR headaches. You have to show them the ups and the downs so that they know what they're getting into. Because if you don't speak into this, they fill it in and they're going to fill it in. And they probably think you make two or three times what you actually do. So if you don't speak into that, then there's going to be a huge expectation gap.
Yeah, I think that um, it's important for people to understand the evolution of the law firm in order to really understand the value of a partner today versus what it was back in the day. Because
Mm-hmm.
law firms have held on to this concept that
Mm-hmm.
well beyond where it's been valuable for law firms to operate. So back in the even in the late 80s, early 90s, advertising was not allowed for law firms. They were
Right.
not allowed to advertise at all, period. So the only way to get business was for the attorney to network, become
Mm-hmm.
known in the community, for people to
Mm-hmm.
know of that person so that when an opportunity arose, that's who somebody thought of when their brothers, uncles, nephews, dogs, adopting family needed an attorney, right? And somehow that referral came to that attorney because of all the work that they did to put their name out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why partners became partners because they had a book of business, because they were acquiring clients, because they were bringing business into the firm, because that was the only way to bring in business. So if a firm wanted to grow, it needed more of those
Mm-hmm.
rainmakers in the firm.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to get them to stay is to get them to share in the profits. Otherwise, why would they do it for you when they could just do it
Right.
for themselves?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So there was a natural evolution into this partner model where if you didn't offer a partnership slot, they would just go somewhere else, and that was the only way to retain your rainmakers. Fast forward to today, when the way to grow a business is not by having a bunch of rainmakers on your staff.
Mm-hmm.
It's by figuring out your best digital marketing strategy, by figuring out your best in-person marketing strategy, because now you're allowed to advertise. You may not be as free as other businesses. If you're a criminal defense firm, you can't order well the legal docket or the list of everybody who was in jail last night and then call each one of them and offer your services. But you could put a billboard outside the jailhouse and then they'll call you when they step out, right? So you have the ability to advertise and market where your audience is, and therefore the rainmaker is not needed anymore. Now, I'm not saying that that's completely gone. There's still definitely networking and referrals is very vibrant in the legal community. But the reality is that you can grow your firm to tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars without having a rainmaker on your staff, and you can have a non-attorney sales team that's
Mm-hmm.
doing the selling for you. Like you can build out all of these things without needing somebody to be that person. So for that reason, all of those reasons, I'm allergic to partnerships. I advise my clients not to make anybody an equity partner. If you want to make them as partner in title only, that's fine. But I do understand, as part of your transition plan, if somebody is probably going to have a hard time buying 100% of your firm all at once when you're ready to retire, that there's probably a path to have them, step into a partnership role and start to obtain some of that equity from you over time so that they can eventually become the owner or the more than 50% partner so they can operate the business while you're in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like that little trip down history lane is important for people to really understand the context of what this looks like for partnerships. Um, You mentioned two other things. You mentioned, I mean, there's an outright purchase, right? Somebody's going to come in and buy your firm, and the that's typically a cash deal, and they're getting their own financing, or is owner financing a thing, in with law firms selling?
I think owner financing is a thing. Yeah.
Okay. So there's different ways that that could be structured. They can go and get their own funds or their own loan and come up with the money and just make the payment, or you can help them finance it by them paying you out over time. Um, and then you mentioned private equity. So talk to me about that because I'm confused about private equity. I hear these stories. I see these things. As a matter of fact, there was just a Business Insider article that I saw last night, and I'm gonna get her on the podcast. But really interesting article about this woman who got hired straight out of Harvard Law at Big Law, and then she decided to hang it up and leave, and she got private equity for the launch of her firm, and she's doing really inexpensive legal services for startups. And I don't have her name in front of me. I didn't prep to have that in front of me for this show, so I might find it while we're talking. But I'll try to find that article so that we can link that up in the show notes. So, folks, if you wanted to read that article, you can. But I'm confused. Okay, her name is Logan Brown. Because I just opened LinkedIn and it popped up right in front of me. And the name of her business is Soxton, Soxton, so Soxton.ai. But she got $2.5 million of VC money
Hmm.
to start her firm. But we know that you can't have a non-attorney as an owner in your business. So how's private equity getting involved? What does that look like?
There are certain markets that you can have non-attorney ownership. You know, there's three or four different, and I think that that's going to continue to grow. If you think back to what happened in the dental industry, where they can come in and manage everything, and you can be an employee of a larger entity. So there's a lot of different structures in the states that allow it, and in the industries that have high marketing costs, you're going to see more of it, where they're going to come in and bring all the efficiency to, and that's what PE is known for, um, to the processes, to the back office, and keeping the legal work and the attorneys focused just on that. Um, so it can come from, managing the back office, or it can come from building kind of like a franchise arrangement where, you know, you operate this, but then you just get a salary, and they can share in the profits. So it varies by jurisdiction, but it's coming. And some of them do it because they're led, or the face of them is another attorney, and so it's like a law firm acquiring other law firms. And so there's a tremendous amount of creativity in this space right now. And, PE and VC have kind of run the consumed all there is to consume in dental. And so I think they're pivoting and trying, and they're going to figure it out how to buy law firms where they can share in the profits. Um, and that creativity, I've seen a lot of different models. I haven't seen the one I really think is going to win, but you look at what Morgan and Morgan has done, right? That's, clearly John Morgan is a very creative owner, right?
Yep.
Um, John doesn't practice law, right? But that's a strategy as well. And there's some firms that want to be the next Morgan and Morgan. I'm thinking of one out of California. They're going to find a way. And, as long as somebody has a JD, I think they can make it work.
Do you think that that's a requirement that like the private equity business needs to have an attorney as an owner? Is that is
I think that's where the creativity comes about. But let's face it, not everybody who went to law school is actually practicing law, right? Most of the successful firms that you and I work with, the attorneys are really the profitable ones are really CEOs, are sit more in the owner seat than they sit in the practicing law seat.
Correct.
Um, so I think we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years a lot of creativity in how to get more money into the legal space.
Yeah, I'm seeing it already in certain areas where, private equity is lending money where they get the first rights for the return on that money.
Mhm.
So they're not really an owner. But their money is virtually guaranteed
Whoever
because
holds the paper tends to be the owner.
yeah. Um, so really, really interesting stuff and stuff to really think about. And I don't know how somebody positions themselves to get the attention of private equity versus an individual buyer. And I don't know if you have insight there. But I also know that of specific owners that I've had conversations with where they're adamant they don't want to sell to private equity. And I'm not sure that I would care, like if somebody comes with a big enough money bag, right? But they're very passionate about what they built and who they're serving, and they don't want that to get lost.
And
And
they're
in the
passionate
process of
about their
somebody
team.
just coming in with money and they're gonna, revamp the team and fire people that they care about, and and perhaps the name of the business is going to change from being the number one business of this to, just another run-of-the-mill shop that does that.
Mhm.
So, I get it, I understand it, and there's definitely a lot of resistance. But like anything new that comes into market, resistance is normal, right? Like people just don't like change. Change is always perceived as bad, and the reality is that very often the change is better.
Yes, and one way to get from where you're at to that is to move yourself into the owner's box so that you can see the business with more clarity and not so much deep down in the detail and the emotions that go with that. Um, I think that I hear a lot of people that don't want to sell to PE. We've had decades of experience with private equity, and everybody has a story to tell. And the story is if you're making money, it's great. If you're not, it's awful. And that's a different vibe from what the legal community typically experiences. But I do think it's important for owners to reflect on how much control they actually have after the deal is done. Things are going to change, to your point. And I think it's like controlling things from the grave with your estate. Um, you got to get in touch with what you are in control of and what you're not, because things are going to change.
Right. Yeah, but
However,
there is you're absolutely right. I'll give you the perfect analogy because I mean, I have real life experience in this. Um, we bought a house, my wife and I, that was around the corner from her parents. The people that were selling it never listed it on the market. They were emotionally attached to this house. They raised their kids in it, and they wanted to find a young family that's going to raise
mhm,
their kids in this house. And they put flyers in the mailboxes in the neighborhood. And one of the neighbors called us and said, "Hey, are you guys interested? We looked at the house. We weren't interested the first time. Looked at it a second time, and then they made us an offer that we couldn't refuse. I mean, they sold it to us for, I don't know, it was like 60 or $70,000 below market because they wanted us to have it.
mhm,
Um, and a year ago, it's a little bit more than a year now, a year and or 3 months. It was the beginning of the summer, it was a year. We sold that house.
mhm,
We outgrew it
mhm,
and we bought another. And my wife, bless her soul, um, bless her heart, whatever you want to say, my wife called them, the previous owners, to ask permission. Is it okay with you that we
right.
turn around and sell this house? Um, and I, I was like, what are you doing? Like, what if they say no? Are you really not going to go through with this? Right? Like, is that really what's going to happen? But the reality is that the moment we became the owners of the house, it was not in their control. They were hoping that we would be the right fit, the right, family that's going to bring our family up in there. And we did. We were in that house for five. We were in the house for a while. We were in
Hmm.
the house from 2016, 2016 to 2024, right? So 8 years. Um, so we got a lot of good use out of it.
Hmm.
But if they drove down the street and saw what the house looked like now, they'd probably be really upset because the person who bought it turned it into like each bedroom is another rental, and and it's not well kept and all of that. But you can sell it to somebody who you think is in alignment with what you were trying to create and hope that you're going to get some version of the continuity of the legacy you built rather than somebody just completely retooling it.
Yes, and I think the legacy is building your team up so that they have choices, you know, investing in your team that they can flourish, whether they work for the new owners or they go someplace else. I think that things are going to change. It's going to look different, um, but you can never go wrong with investing in people.
Yeah, I just heard a line in the book Unreasonable Hospitality. I was listening to it
Love that
last
book.
night.
Hmm.
Will Guidara, and
Hmm.
he said in his book, and I don't think it's his line, but he said, leaders create leaders.
Hmm.
Right? And if you're doing your job well as a leader, then you're really up leveling your staff
Hmm.
to become the best version of themselves, which for some people, leadership is that destination. And if you've done a good job with that, then you're handing over a team that should not want to replace because they are good at what they do. Um, all right, so we spent quite a bit of time on the types of sales. I want to just move to the valuation because you said, it's a multiple of the owner's income, so that's their
Hmm.
payroll plus the profit, whatever owner benefit they're getting from it, minus whatever salary it would cost to replace them if they're actually boots on the ground in the business. Um, what is the multiple that you're typically seeing in the marketplace? I would imagine before you even answer, I'm going to venture a guess because I'm not involved in this space. I would venture a guess that depending on the other factors that I mentioned, your marketing system, your team, and all of that would drive a higher multiple versus a business that's less organized or less predictable. Um, and I'm also going to guess that it's somewhere between two and five.
Yes, you are correct. I don't see a lot of fives. I think it's lower than five. I think it's a little higher than two. Um, and to get the higher end, you really have to be almost exclusively sitting in that owner's box, um, because they're not buying you. They're not buying the past. They're buying the systems. They're buying the brand. And they might not even buy that if they have to change it. So the investors are very savvy, but this is the one and only transaction that a law firm owner is going to make, right? Typically. Uh,
Right.
and so they need to get good counsel. But in a marketplace that you can get multiples easy in other industries from five up, um, some diversification might be in order.
Yeah, I love the idea of diversification. Um, there's a great lady, Cody Sanchez. Love watching her YouTube stuff. She wrote is it Main Street Millionaire is the name of the book. I'm gonna look
Mhm.
it up. Um, but great read if you want to think about how to approach a transaction, how to approach a purchase or a sale. We're focusing on the selling. I think that thinking about growing through acquisition is something that our younger attorneys, people who are earlier in their journey, should be something that they're considering, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, I I'm doing it right now actually. So I'm currently evaluating accounting firms. I want to grow. I want to purchase a mature tax practice to add
Mhm.
on or bolt on to my existing tax practice or fold my existing tax practice into it because I want to focus my effort and energy on the fractional CFO side of the business that we're running and our coaching programs. And the growing it myself is a little bit slower than I'd like.
Right.
And I think that our, some of my clients and some of our listeners might be very well served buying a firm as part of your expansion or growth, or even if you're thinking about starting a law firm. I have a great talk that I do, and I'll have my team link it up in the show notes. I talk about, how to build a $1.5 million practice in 12 months.
Hmm.
But the impetus or the framework of that talk is thinking like an investor, not like an attorney. And most attorneys start their firm because you're either straight out of law school and decided you want to start a firm and you're thinking of yourself as the attorney, or you're leaving another law firm and you're thinking, how hard could it be? I see what they're billing. If I just serve 10 clients, I'll replace my income. And
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
you're starting your firm. Both of those are not wearing the owner hat, wearing the investor hat. And if you were to buy, say, a 7-Eleven, you're not
Uh-huh.
thinking, I'm going to stand behind the counter for 12 hours a day or 24
Right.
hours a day,
Uh-huh.
right? Like you're approaching that understanding that you're going to have people working behind the counters and you're going to have somebody in charge of inventory and you're probably not going to be hands-on at all. And that's the way
Right.
that I would love for some attorneys to approach their business from the get-go.
Mhm.
And that's where I think there's a great opportunity to acquire a firm and learn from the owner who built it, have them stay on to mentor you a little bit, and then you're on your own. But you bought a business that's already cash flowing. It's already got all the hard work done, and now you can focus on running it well and scaling and maybe improving on what the previous owner did, bringing your own ideas. I think it's a great opportunity for people to look at that. The name of the book is Main Street Millionaire: How to Make Extraordinary Wealth Buying Ordinary Businesses by Cody Sanchez, and she's got a great YouTube channel. So check her out. That you'll get a great education on business acquisition and business selling in that process. And um, the other thing that you're going to want to do after you read the book is you're going to want to go and buy a laundromat or a plumbing business or a car wash, which you can totally do because we talked about diversification, which is what triggered my little rant there on that. Um, and I think that there's opportunity all around us between
Mhm.
run-of-the-mill businesses and or franchises. Like there's so many things that you can do. So if you've got extra cash and you're like, hey, look, let me start some diversification here, you can do that. All right, Pam, we're gonna bring this to a close. So what we do is one parting piece of advice or wisdom with our audience, and then how do people learn more about you, get in touch with you, take the next step if they enjoyed this conversation and they want to explore. Maybe they're exploring selling. Maybe they want to understand how to get themselves ready to sell, or maybe they're a buyer.
Mhm. I think you build it to sell. It's like love it or list it. You know, if you
Hmm.
build it up and you fall in love with your firm, um, then keep it or sell it if you're ready to be done. But build it to sell is my parting comment. And people can get a hold of me by emailing me at Pam at Cathcap, CATHCAP.com. Happy to have a conversation.
Awesome, love it. And you just said something with this built to sell that really triggered something. We really focused this whole idea of selling the firm around your plan for retirement. And I think that you're onto something there where people should really think about their business as how quickly can I get this to be something that is sellable, that is valuable, and then I can make a decision about whether I want to exit this now and go on to my next thing. And
Mhm.
maybe my next thing is a car wash. I have a a buddy so I'm a paramedic on top of everything else, and I have a coworker who's a paramedic, and he stopped working because he bought himself a car wash.
Mhm.
And I worked last night. He came in this morning and relieved me, and I said, "Oh, how's the business going? How's?" And he's like, "It's incredible. Like it was the most I could have asked for out of our first, I think he's in his end of his second year of ownership.
Mhm.
They just paid off their house and owning a car wash.
Mhm.
Like there you can do anything. You can literally do anything. There's so much out there, so much possibility. And once you understand what it is to own a business, once you understand what it is to be an investor in a business,
Mhm.
it's no longer boots on the ground. Oh, I'm going to figure out how to do this, right? Like you can have a plumbing business and know nothing about plumbing. You just need a good plumber on your staff.
Right, right. And there's plenty of those.
Yep. Yep. So I love that concept and I love that new way of thinking about things because I've been trying to get law firm owners to really think of themselves as that investor, as that owner. And it's hard. But maybe if you think of it that way, think of it as positioning your business to sell and then making this big decision about whether you want to sell it or not.
Mhm.
Understanding it has nothing to do with retirement. You could be in your 30s and selling a firm.
Mhm. Yes, you can.
I'm proud of you if you do that. So really cool stuff. Pam, this was a great conversation. Really appreciate you being here. And folks, if you are not subscribed to the Profit with Law podcast, what are you waiting for? We're here every single week with another amazing guest interview and starting to do some solo episode recordings again. So when I started the podcast, I was doing it twice a week. So one interview, one solo. Moved away from those solo episodes. My team is pushing me back to it. So we're going to do that. And I already recorded one, and I'm going to be recording some more now into year end. So stay tuned for those. But if you hit the subscribe button, you'll get notified by your podcast player, by your YouTube channel, letting you know that video or episode has dropped, and you'll get to really enjoy the content. And if you're getting use out of it, there's no better way to say thank you than to forward this episode to somebody else who can use listening to it. Sure, you can leave us a rating and review, but I'd much rather that you took a minute and just take the link for this and share, text it to a buddy, text it to somebody else who can use it, who can hear it, listen to it and say, "Oh wow, this was really incredible. Thank you so much for sharing this with me." And that's it. Till next week. Take care and yeah, make that law firm profitable. See you soon.